Oh, baby. What's up, baby? Good morning, friends. Welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I thought I would bring you out here while I'm doing chores this morning. It is a toasty 21 degrees today. Nice and crisp. Yet it is supposed to warm up later this week to about 68 degrees. It's crazy the swings that the temperatures go back and forth this time of year. Hi, baby. Good girl. But I thought while I'm doing chores that I would answer a question that comes up from time to time. And that is whether or not we're going to stay here forever. So if you are new here or you don't know the story, my husband and I were an Army family, part of an Army family, the parents of an Army family. And Mr. Smith was in the Army for 25 years before he retired from the military. And when he did, we bought a property in Alabama and built a homestead there. You know, we bought a house with about 9.5 acres of land. And at the time, it was just a house and a shed. And that was it. And we lived there for 7 years. And over the course of that time, I built chicken coops. I built gardens. I built animal structures, you know, mini barns. All the infrastructure of a homestead. And then one day, I'll give you the short version. Then one day I had a sense that we were going to give it up. And I wept. And I got angry, and then I submitted to God, and I said, whatever you want, Father. Not long after that, I had the sense very clearly that we were supposed to move to Arkansas, but with my husband not being a believer, how do I convey that to him and him not think me crazy? And so I asked the Father to put it in his mind and make it his idea, and he did. I'll leave a link to that whole story up here in the corner or down below, and you can check that out later. You cut that ice. Isn't that a little bit cold, baby? Come on. And I'll tell y'all, as soon as we began the move, as soon as I submitted to the Father's will, there were prayers that I've been praying a long time about that were getting answered. Now, was it hard giving up the Alabama homestead? 1,000%, yes. But the Father doesn't ask us to do easy things. a lot of times he asks us to do the hard things, the things we don't think we can do. How are we going to sell the homestead and move when we'd never planned for it? But the Father was faithful, and somehow, miraculously, everything worked out perfectly. We moved here to Arkansas, and in the midst of the move, the Father began answering prayers that I had prayed for a very long time. You know, we were house hunting and found this place, and as soon as I set foot on the property, I had a sense of here, this, a peace. You know, this place is very different than our place in Alabama, but I felt such a sense of just peace here. And you know, the property with like just the creek that runs through most of the year, and the woods, and all the stonework, and the gazebo, and just all the different things. It feels like you're like in a state park or something. It's just peaceful. You know, I've had people ask, well, will you stay in Arkansas? Will you, grow old there? Will you never move again? And I've said, y'all, I'm tired of moving. This is our 20th home as adults, as a married couple. And moving's a lot. Now, granted, most of those moves were because of the military. But this one was not. And it's, moving's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of lifting, it's a lot of physical labor, it's expense. But, yeah. So when we moved here, I'm like, okay, Father, I'm really tired of moving. It'd be nice if this is our last home and we don't move anymore. And I know, missed a couple pieces. I know 1,000% that we were supposed to move here. And by being obedient, I believe that is why the Father began answering prayers that I've been praying for a very, very long time. And no, I'm not necessarily going to answer and share what those are, because some things are personal. I choose to do YouTube. I choose to share my life on the internet, but my family never agreed to do that. And so it is not my place or your business what some of those prayers might be. But I know prayers were answered for me and for the family who moved into our homestead there in Alabama and made it their homestead. So that said, big question is, will we stay here? And the answer to that is, I don't think so. You see, when we moved here, and I like I said, I had this tremendous sense of just peace and calm, and like I knew we were supposed to be here. But what I've never really felt was a sense of permanency. Our son and daughter-in-law, who live here currently, they're not going to live here forever. He started a career here, but it's a career that takes him places. Like, literally, he has to go different places. He's currently in Texas. And so they're not going to live here forever. And yes, it's going to be devastating when Bean moves away. But that's the season. This was just a season. I've seen it. I've known for probably 2 years that this was only a season here. When the Father calls you to do something, He tells you to go somewhere, you go out of obedience. But just because He sends you somewhere doesn't always mean that you're supposed to stay there forever. And I've been praying for about 2 years now. Father, I don't want to be outside your will. Father, I don't think we're staying here. But if I'm wrong and we're supposed to, thwart us on every turn. Make it abundantly clear that this is where we're supposed to stay. And shortly thereafter, things started happening that were a confirmation that no, you're not going to be staying there. So are we going to move? Yes, there will come a day. When? I don't know. Where to? I have an idea, but praying about it. Praying about it. Because if the Father doesn't want us there, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be anywhere that is outside the will of the Father. Of course, I hope He doesn't put us in a city, because, y'all, it stresses me out just the thought of it. I am a country mouse through and through. And just like our home in Alabama that I loved dearly, all the things that we built there, the orchard, the just the beautiful scenery, the misty mornings where the fog swirled around the pasture. I loved living there. But I also loved living here. It's very different than where we were. There it was flat, here it's not. There it was wide open. Here we have beautiful woods with, just amazing scenery and sitting areas all over the place, even up on the very top of the ridge. And there's a bench just like this sitting up there on the very top, on the very edge of the ridge. And you just have this amazing view. And I can see all the way to Oklahoma. When the day comes and we leave here, I will miss this place. But missing a place and looking back with a warmth and nostalgia and just a thankfulness of having lived there isn't the same as regretting. People have frequently asked me, do you miss your homestead? You miss your homestead, don't you? I know you miss your homestead. Well, yeah, I miss it. But that doesn't mean I regret it. Because like I said, the Father started answering prayers, things that were life-changing prayers. And there is nothing greater than that. There is nothing greater than hearing from the Father, being obedient, and the Father blessing you for your obedience. Because ultimately that's what matters. He says in His Word, He much prefers obedience, even over sacrifices. But sometimes the obedience in the keeping of it requires some sacrifice. And you have to ask yourself, are you willing? Are you willing to give that up? Or is the thing the Father's asking you to give up too important to you? Is that too important? Is that more important to you than the Father and His will in your life? I would caution you that if the Father is telling you to do something and it requires you to give something up, if that cost you think is too valuable, then you might just be turning that thing that you love into an idol, because you're saying it's more important to you than the will of the Father and being obedient to what He wants. There are two different mindsets. One is obey because you understand the why. And the other is obey even if you don't know why, and maybe someday you'll learn. It's described as Greek thinking versus Hebrew thinking. I prefer to be Hebrew because it is simply obedience to the Father. And if He explains the why later on, wonderful. But if you never learn, you are still obedient. And it's that trusting of the Father. That is your faith. So, again, No, we're not going to live here forever. But I'm going to love every minute that we are. So with that, God bless, and I'll talk to y'all next time.